Welcome, everybody. I'm Stargazer MarQ, and you're here to stay curious about backyard astronomy. That's what we bring you on Mondays is a short little program about what you can see in the sky. And today we're going to talk about that really super bright star in the west after sunset. That is the planet Venus. Venus, of course, is known through the ages. Nobody discovered Venus. The five classical planets of Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn were all known to the ancients as the wandering stars. That's what planet means in Greek, is wandering star. But Venus is far from a star. In fact, it's our twin of Earth, but it's a hellish twin, because though we had high hopes that Venus could harbor life like on Earth, because it's just 400 miles smaller than us, it is enveloped in a 30-mile thick atmosphere that is truly toxic. It's sulfuric acid and carbon dioxide. And we're going to tell you some things about that. Got with me today Jessica Galloway, is the engineer behind our new program here to help you stay curious. Marty Winkle, my faithful cameraman and co-producer, has been on vacation, but he'll be back Wednesday or Thursday on our regular Stay Curious program. So glad that you're with us today, and sit back and learn a little bit about that. It's the third brightest object in the sky behind the sun and the moon, of course. And there's so many peculiarities about Venus that really remove it from being anything like the Earth. And we're going to share those with you. But, you know, Venus is a popular, songs have been named Venus. Frankie Avalon in the 60s had a beautiful song about Venus. Shocking Blue in 1969 was covered by Bananarama on I'm Your Venus. And it's because Venus is the goddess of beauty and goddess of love in Roman mythology. And in Greek mythology, that was Aphrodite, okay? And Aphrodite, I'm throwing Jessica did you catch that? I'm throwing her a marker there, seeing she had a question from one of you all out there. But we encourage your questions and participation always, and that's what Jessica's all about, is getting our social media up to where it's snappy and short and gets out there all over the place, because we truly here at the American Space Museum believe we have things to share with you. And we are on YouTube, we're on Twitch, and we're on Facebook as we speak. So tell your friends and join those outlets and increase our numbers, because that's how our nonprofit is going to keep the doors open, is participation from people around the world. Wanted to mention that actually the early ancients thought Venus might be two stars. They didn't, because they could see it in the evening evening sky sometimes, and then the morning sky. And they didn't realize, of course, that the Earth was round and orbiting the sun. This is a period of time until just 400 years ago, when everybody thought the Earth was the center of everything and everything went around the Earth. When you lay outside and look at things move around you, that makes logical sense. But that's why we're here with Stargazer MarQ, me, to help straighten you out on that. We're the ones moving 1,200 miles an hour east, and everything is going west. But the planets are an exception, and they can go east also, and do so for periods of time in their orbit. And that's what's going to happen to Venus over the next 3 or 4 months. It's going to be in our evening sky, easy to see, and it's going to be creeping to the left. And as it's going to curve up a little bit and then dive bomb down after Christmas below the horizon and follow the sun. And then a month later, it's going to precede the sun and come up in the eastern sky. You got a comment or question there, Jessica?
We're having a little smidge of an audio issue. So,
Okay.
Larry pointed out that we're having and Dave is watching on YouTube.
All right, Larry, Dave on YouTube, thank you. I brought the microphone. This microphone closer. Of course, I'm going to say telescope. So we will just try to plow on through that. Sorry if the audio is compromised. Jessica's working on it as we speak. Venus is just 25 million miles away from Earth. Mars is about 50 million miles at its closest, okay? The closest Mars ever gets is 35 million miles. So Venus, after the moon at 240,000 miles away, is, of course, our closest neighbor in space. But Venus's surface is even hotter than Mercury, that's a lot closer to the sun. Why? Because of this gaseous cloud that's 30 miles thick that envelops Venus, and it has created a runaway greenhouse. And this is why we need to send space probes to Venus and understand what happens so it doesn't happen here on Earth. And we have sent over 40 missions to Venus in the last 6 decades of space exploration, and we'll detail some of those here in a few minutes. Incredibly, also, Venus has 450-mile-an-hour winds in these clouds, and Galileo discovered the phases of Venus, which that's about the only interesting thing of Venus through a telescope, because it's in clouds. It doesn't look very interesting. This looks like a white blob, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. Let me bring up some of the pictures here. Yes, Jessica? We're good now? Okay, thank you. Getting out of the chute here on a Monday. Here is Venus, okay? Of course, Earth is to the right, and Venus is right here, all right? And if we took away the clouds of Venus, it would be stripped down to look like this. It does have a 9,000-mile summit, but for the most part, that 900-degree heat on Venus has flattened everything, all right? And it is a barren wasteland. In fact, because it is it has the most volcanoes in the solar system, with over 1,600 dormant and maybe a couple dozen live volcanoes. We have some of the orbiters have witnessed not actual volcanic eruptions, but evidence of eruptions. And I mentioned those orbiters that the Earth has, of course, we want to know about Venus, and Earthlings have sent to Venus all these manned space probes. And the Russians were particularly interested in Venus in the 70s, and we'll see some pictures of that. Before I get too far away from it, Venus is the most reported UFO in the sky, and if you watch it tonight, as the Earth's turning and the sun is setting, and then, of course, the twilight comes, Venus pokes through the twilight, and as the Earth moves every half hour or so, you'll notice it's getting closer and closer to the horizon. Well, because of the atmosphere of the Earth and bright Venus, that light from Venus is like going through the Earth's atmosphere like a prism. So therefore you see reds and blues, and it can shimmer or scintillate, like we call it. Venus can also cast a shadow. It's so bright. I have seen my shadow and a shadow of a stick cast by Venus on top of White Top Mountain in Damascus, Virginia, on the snow on one cold evening, just trying to do that. So it is very, very bright, Venus. Now here is the day on Venus is longer than its year. I repeat myself. There's Venus up close, looking through the clouds in ultraviolet light, which can see through some of those layers, all right? But I'm going to bring in here, Jessica, my Earth globe and my Venus globe, all right? And there we go. And let me go do that. There we go. And we're sorry that they're hot, but that's the nature of the green screen behind me. And so ignore that. But here's the Earth spinning there, and Venus. And this is a beautiful globe of Venus. The low areas are indeed not water, but they're low areas. But we think Venus may have been a water world at one time, okay? And then on the other hemisphere, there's more landscape and more land areas on Venus. But kind of similar if you think of the blue on Venus as being water, okay, and of course the Earth's blue. Now, I said Venus takes 243 days to go around one time on its axis, where it takes us 24 hours. And it orbits the sun in 224 days. So its day is 19 days longer than its year. How could that happen? Venus does not rotate counterclockwise like all of the other planets in the solar system, except for Uranus. Uranus rolls like a bowling ball, like this, down its pathway. We're knocked over by 24.5 degrees. Uranus is knocked over 90 degrees. Most of the other planets are straight up and down, the big ones, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. But Mars is also knocked over on its side by about the same as Earth, like 23 degrees. All right? Venus, however, at some point in its history, it was knocked over, all right, as it was spinning, knocked over on its side this way, so that it rotates, if you look down on it, clockwise. And that's what's going on. This clockwise motion counter plays the revolution around the sun and makes it its day is longer than its year. We don't know what knocked over Jupiter, Venus, or Earth, or Mars for that matter, but we speculate that in the early solar system there may have been other bigger bodies the size of Mars, which Mars is half the size of Earth, and run into these solid planets and actually tip them over on their side. And be grateful we are tipped over on our side, or we wouldn't have seasons, and we might not have life as we know it if we were straight up and down. Now, let's look at a little bit of the history and get these out of the way. The history of Venus and all of our planets was that even 100 years ago, there was high hopes that all the planets of the solar system were inhabited with creatures and maybe even human-like beings. As strange as that says today, when we're groping for the crumbs of biomass or something on Mars to say that there's life on Mars, even many astronomers 100, 150 years ago just thought for sure that there was life in our solar system. And a man named Percival Lowell perpetuated life on Mars and the canals on Mars and all that. Even the great astronomer John Herschel, one of the most famous of all, thought that all the planets, even the sun, might be inhabited with living creatures. So we thought that because Venus was enshrouded in clouds, that it would be a luscious jungle area. And that was thought in the 1940s and 50s, a lot of science fiction around that, the Earth Man on Venus. And was very popular that you'd go to Venus, there might be dinosaurs, lizards, giant creatures there, even humanoids. Well, it took Mariner, this spacecraft by NASA, Mariner 4, in 1962 went by Venus, went by Venus, and though it just passed by, its instrumentation pierced the clouds, and it knew the clouds were poisonous with carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid, and it also stuck radar all the way down to the surface and engaged it. It was 900 degrees at that surface, even hotter than much closer to the sun, Mercury. Then Russia became very interested in Venus, and in the 1970s they landed 4 spacecraft on Venus. The first one in 1972 transmitted for a few seconds and fell over. But what's going on? But they had 3 missions that showed us a beautiful landscape of Venus. Here's the first panorama on the surface of Venus. You see on the edges is the horizon, okay? When you have 30 miles of atmosphere, that has weight to it. That's what your barometric pressure is all about the amount of weight that's on top of you from the atmosphere. So being on Venus is like the surface of Venus. You might as well be a mile under the ocean with all that water pressure under you, because the pressure on the surface is 900 times that on Earth. What does that mean? That means it would crush not a tin can, it would crush a lead can, just like that pressure. So this spacecraft by Russia had to be made extra strong and heavy to withstand this tremendous pressure. But in the 70s, they're landing on Venus, all right, right after we landed on Mars. So there's one of the panoramas, and here's the 4 views of Venus taken by their landers. And at the bottom here, you see the pieces of the Venera, Russian for Venus, the Venera spacecraft there. Up at the top, look at these rocks jumbled up there. All right, they're flattened. All right, that is a sign of erosion, wind erosion or water erosion, okay, as well as the mighty heat. All right, has softened up the edges on there. But isn't that amazing? What an incredible view to look at an alien landscape, all right? Because Venus is enshrouded in clouds, the surface never sees complete daytime. It's always and of course, with a 243-degree day, it's going to stay light over one area a lot longer than other areas. But that light bounces around the planet and gives it this spooky aura of orange yellow from the sulfur, and it never gets about as deep twilight is as dark as it gets on Venus. And this is the Magellan spacecraft, the Space Transportation System 30, a shuttle mission in the cargo bay of the, I think it's Atlantis. Put Magellan in space. It has a motor on the bottom there that they fire to send it to Venus. Okay. So we've had quite a few spacecraft go to Venus. Yes.
My darling husband wants to know if we saw the article talking about building a city in the clouds of Venus, how there's a livable zone above the cloud layer.
Thank you, Troy Galloway. He's brought up something that I'm glad that he did, because I might forget to talk about, is we recently discovered that there's some sweet layers of these clouds where there could be a whole stream, a wind stream of water vapor, where things could live in the clouds possibly. And Troy's right, commenting there that we could possibly have things living, creatures that would look like a jellyfish, but instead of being in the sea, the jellyfish would be in the atmosphere. We think this could be going on Jupiter and Saturn for sure, because there's air, as you go from a cloud deck of these planets lower, it gets hotter. So if the cloud tops of Saturn and Jupiter are 250 below zero, when you go about 30 miles in, it's like a 30 to, they're like 100 below zero. And then closer in, they reach a temperate zone where it's like 70 degrees. And there could even be like a water ring or water globe inside of these gas giants. We don't know for sure. Or water arcs. So, Troy, thanks for bringing that up. Yes, they are investigating Venus being a place where amoebas or things that fly in the clouds could live and dwell. All right. Yep. There's still hope for life everywhere. And you know something we know about life is we find it everywhere on Earth. We go to geysers in the ocean that are 900 degrees hot, and there's creatures that are living off of that without any light, without any food, biochemical stuff going on. We know that life is very crazy, and for you science fiction buffs out there, I say over and over, science fact is even crazier than science fiction could ever think of. It's proven out time and time again. What we're looking at here is like the melted surface of Venus. They're like the Appalachian Mountains. They've been beat down millions of years, rising up and down. The Appalachians have, where the Rockies are new mountains, and they're very sharp. So a lot going on. We hope to go back to Venus in 2028. NASA's got a Veritas orbiter planned and a Da Vinci lander in 2030. And Envision orbiter is the European Space Agency going back to there. A list of 42 space missions have gone by Venus. And there's what it looks like in a telescope. Let me hold off on that a second. 42 and counting space missions to planet Venus, including flybys of Messenger to Mercury, Galileo to Jupiter, and Cassini to Saturn. Now, wait a minute. You said Venus is the second planet from the sun. Why are we sending spacecraft going to Jupiter and Saturn towards Venus? Good question. Because we use Venus as a gravitational loop, as a gravitational slingshot to get more momentum to go to the outer planets, to save fuel on these spacecraft, and also get larger spacecraft on the current list of rockets that we have to launch. So a lot of ingenuity in going to the planets to take the most equipment you can. It's not always the fastest direct route. And so Galileo and Cassini, both very successful missions, Galileo at Jupiter and Cassini at Saturn, used that gravitational boost of Venus to escape the sun's gravity that keeps trying to pull everything into it. So when you go outside and look at Venus tonight, you might bring your binoculars and put them up there. You're not going to see much. In fact, this is probably what you're going to see is just a nice little blob in there. You'll probably see a little, if you've got a telescope and look at Venus, this is what it looks like right now. one of the most uninteresting objects in the sky, for sure, because it's covered in clouds. But those clouds change. And here we see Venus throughout its cycle of when it's in the evening sky. It goes through, at the bottom is where we see it is now. It is far away from us on the other side of the sun, okay? And as it comes closer to us between the earth and the sun, it goes through a first quarter phase like the moon, and then a crescent phase like our moon does. And Mercury also exhibits phases like our moon because it is between the earth and the sun, these objects. So our evil twin, Venus there, just 400 miles smaller than us. It is 7,500 miles. We're 7,900 miles. Two lost balls in space. It was so exciting to think back in the 50s in the 60s as a boy that there could be dinosaurs on Venus. And then that Mariner spacecraft went by and took its readings and said, there ain't nothing living on Venus. It's hot as you know what. H-E double hockey sticks, right? So hope you get out there and look at Venus. It's going to be up there all fall and through the winter. And any other questions from anybody out there?
No, just talk about troubleshooting and watching on YouTube.
Good.
Everybody's trying to watch in different places now.
Good. Well, we're so grateful for Jessica and bringing her talents to the American Space Museum. And we'll have Marty back in the saddle here in a couple days. And while we mention it, we want to show you that you can support our museum. We will take donations from you and put your logo here, or your cat, your dog, your picture, whatever. Like Jessica, she helping us. She is Cheap Development, and she can help you anywhere in the world. She helps some websites with some doctors in town and all around the country. And we are creating our own constellation of contributions, and we have $10,000 in stars and counting. And later in this week, we're going to reveal what that constellation looks like. Kind of a big hint behind me here of what we're working on there, Jessica. But truly excited about everybody embracing our Stay Curious program and our Stargazer MarQ on Mondays. We can't thank you enough for being part of that. And we've got a great show for you tomorrow to tease you. It's going to be about landing the Gemini spacecraft on land like an ultralight. Okay, so you're not going to want to miss that tomorrow on Stay Curious. Until then, I'm Stargazer MarQ, and we'll see you tomorrow to bridge the space between us.